I'm Gary Venner, Managing Director of IFA Acquisitions, and I'm joined by Marais, Director of Vertus Capital, where we continue our informative question and answer series on our YouTube channel to provide insights into helping buyers and sellers understand the benefits of using brokers for the sale of their IFA businesses. The title of the next video is coming up on screen now.
So Gary, one of the questions we get asked quite often is how do brokers charge in the market and who do they represent? Is it one side or both sides?
Sure, Matt. Well, most IFA acquisition specialists will charge the acquirer for their fee. And what that means to the seller is that there will be no fee payable by them, and there'll be no contract and no hidden costs. So that's the great thing about the fact of specialists charging the acquirer. And it is suitable, I would say, for most SME or micro IFA businesses, and SMEs, I mean, to a large, level as well in terms of the funds under management and recurring income. It probably wouldn't suit the businesses with over, let's say, $1 billion of funds under management. And of course, the benefit of the seller is getting immediate access to many purchasers. Of course, we as a broker will only be introducing the seller to the most appropriate acquirer that we feel suits them best, and we will also make sure that we have their agreement that they feel that too. Okay. With regards to who do we represent, our client is basically the acquirer. But to get a deal across the table, we need to make sure that we fully understand the seller's needs as well, because there will be no deal unless we can do that. Does that help answer the question?
Yes, and I think one of the follow-ons from that we would get from potentially the seller community is, how do I know that engaging with the broker's services, how do I know that there's an incentive from them to get a full commercial value for my business, and they're not chipping away or pushing that value down? How is that dealt with in the incentive structures?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, most brokers will have a standard charge for acquirers, so we're not being extra remunerated by leaning one way or another. And the other great thing about this is that our fee actually is usually derived on the consideration value. So of course what we do want to do is to help the seller obtain the best value that we possibly can for them, because it helps our fee as well.
What is a sell-side broker?
Well, a sell-side broker is basically a broker that's engaged by the seller, and they're going to engage the broker to arrange for the promotion of their business for sale. And that would include an analysis of the business and looking at the accountancy side, calculating the EBITDA calculation, doing a compliance oversight of that business, and actually putting together a prospectus. This is normally used by much larger IFA firms, and to gauge that size, we're normally talking those that are in excess of $1 billion funds under management, and often multi-billion funds under management, that would want to do that to keep the business very sort of confidential, but knowing that that broker was capable of going to suitably sized acquirers that would be able to make an offer for the purchase. And of course you could also use that service as well for those that are looking for a flotation as well, for a public listing. There's nothing to stop any IFA asking the broker to represent them and to be a sell-side broker. It's not always the most cost-effective way, because those brokers usually is being remunerated by the acquirer, but it's always available, and for certain size businesses they may well want to do that. And of course, using a broker that has got the capability to be able to have the acquiring firms and relationships with them to be able to make a good sell would be something that could happen.
So before meeting with the broker to sell my business, what preparation should I do?
Well, Matt, really the IFA doesn't need to do any preparation, to be honest, because a good broker will find out the information about their goals and also some high-level information about their business. However, if an IFA wants to come well prepared, I would just say simply have these as the minimum information. Number of client households, the amount of funds under management, and the recurring income for the business. Now, there are other areas that we would break down during that conversation, but those are the key areas. And also the other preparation, if you're looking at making a sale of your business, would be getting your files up together and making sure they're well documented as well.
Gary, will a broker help me with the pre-sale preparation, or do I need to find and engage with an external consultant to do that?
Well, for most sellers, Matt, there is absolutely no need to engage with a consultant. The broker will list the level of information required, and for most that is easily obtainable by the business owner or help from their support team. And of course, if they're using software such as Intelligent Office, some of that information will be easily pulled down from those reports as well. Of course, for some IFAs, they really don't have the MI involved in that business, and so they are unable through time restrictions to provide that. So in that situation, I would recommend that they ask their broker if a consultancy service is available to help them to put that together. There's usually an extra charge for that, and it would normally be done on an hourly charge.
So what questions should I be asking my broker in my first meeting with them?
I think the first questions I'd be asking is just trying to find out from the broker what theirs and their firm's experience is in acquisitions in the IFA sector. That's what I would start off by asking, because you want to know that they fully understand what's involved, and also what choice do they have. So, looking to see that there is plenty of opportunities to be discussed as well. I'd ask the next question are my goals realistic? And this isn't necessarily a question you would ask, but one that you should ask yourself during this conversation or after it, is did the broker ask me enough questions that would be able to answer whether my goals are realistic? Do they know enough about my business before jumping in and offering me a solution? Because I won't apologise for asking lots of questions to really understand the business. You need to, and it's not just about the fund holdings, but it's also about the age of clients, it's the types of investments, etc. So that would be the other thing I would be saying, before you jump in and use the services of that a broker, is ask those sort of questions.
As a seller, do I need to engage with one broker or multiple brokers?
Well, I would encourage a seller to speak with different brokers, to be honest. However, I would suggest that they only engage with one broker. I think from doing the initial questions and discussions, they will find out which broker they feel best suits them, understands them, and also has the choice that they will be able to find them the right solution. The problem of engaging with multiple brokers is that there are too many submissions often happening, and this can be at a detriment to the seller at the end of the day, and it can be confusing as well. I'd almost encourage the seller to be prepared to give an exclusivity to one broker, say for a period of 8 weeks, to give that broker enough time to come up with the right solution for them. Of course, if that broker is not doing what you would expect them to do, I think at that point it would be a good sort of marker to say, well, consider using a different broker at that point.
So Gary, if I'm engaged with the broker and I'm looking at a number of potential acquirers, how much optionality do I have to pick a specific partner from another one?
Okay, well, Matt, first of all, I would say is, are you in an exclusivity period with the broker? If that is the case, and you want to engage with a different IFA that you've heard about, etc., then you would channel that through the broker. And most brokers should be able to still do that, whether that's on a purchase or a sale side arrangement. It's important that when you do talk to your broker, that you make sure that you feel that they have choice available, and it's being very open about what different companies do, and we would invite the seller to talk about companies that they've heard of, etc., and we would be able to give some insight into those. But together we will work together to find the most appropriate purchaser. Of course, once you get to heads of terms arrangement with an acquirer, at that point you normally would have a binding exclusivity included in the heads of terms, which is available to allow the acquirer to do the amount of due diligence that they need to complete on this deal and to get to the sale and purchase agreement. And you will see in that clause that it will prevent you then at that point from talking to any other broker or other acquirers. So make sure before you actually get into heads of terms, you're very happy with the deal. You shouldn't really be going into heads of terms still unsure about whether they're the right person for you.
And so presumably at that stage, I would have wanted to assess what impact the deal might have, for example, on my clients and staff. Is there the option for me to have some say over that in the journey?
Absolutely, and really, again, before you get to heads of terms, this should be discussed, so that you should have no surprise culture here, that you would understand what the acquirer will be doing with staff and clients post-sale. Of course, when we get to the actual completion, then the ownership passes to the acquirer. So, this is the point where the seller will no longer have a say. They don't have the ownership. So make sure this is all ironed out in advance, and if necessary, make sure it's included in the heads of terms as well, so that there's an expectation what will happen.
So Gary, one of the questions that comes up often is, how long does the process take from when you start engaging with the broker looking to sell your business to when a deal might complete?
Well, there is definitely no fixed answer on this, Matt, at all, and deals can take all sorts of timescales. If I was to give you a rough indication of how quickly a deal can go through, I'd say allow at least 3 months from the initial introduction to a completion. However, that's normally for an asset purchase. If there's a share purchase, you are going to have an extra period of time added on, which is usually the change of control with the FCA, and that takes 60 working days, and the FCA take up most of that, so you're basically adding on another 3 months. So those are typically the earliest you can expect a deal to complete. Now, I'm not saying that you couldn't complete earlier, because in occasions you can, and I certainly have done that, certainly where an IFA is facing an unfortunate situation with health, etc. But those would be a good barometer. But it's not unusual to have some of our deals that can take easily up to 12 months in that process. It's not all done overnight. There will be a due diligence period, and that means that files need to be checked, accounting records need to be checked, also involvement of accountants to make sure that they're happy that it's being done in the most tax efficient way, and of course we're solicited to agree the actual the wording in contracts, etc. I think again you can use by having solicitors that have worked in this marketplace will speed up the process. They're more familiar with what needs to happen. So there are ways that we can certainly recommend that will make it quicker and less painful.
In our experience as well, that's one of the benefits of having a representative helping with the deal.
Yeah.
Is you minimize the lag between the steps in a deal, which ultimately when you look at the start to finish, you know, deals can get pretty aimless without representation, and if there's representation, it minimizes those, and you can get what would otherwise be an 18-month deal timeline down to 6 to 12 months, even factoring in the FCA change of control.
Definitely, and I think that really a broker and solicitors working together is really helpful in that area as well.
Yeah.
So thank you, Matt, for all your input in today in putting together this Q&A series. It's been very enlightening how you can support a lot of acquirers with acquisition finance, and of course also how you support sellers as well with that sort of making sure that they feel comfortable that the funding is in place. How does that sort of impact you in being involved in today's Q&A as well?
It's been very helpful, thank you, and always good to work together with brokers in a market that actually do a proper job of bringing buyers and sellers together. We find it's a very valuable service that you provide. We find the outcomes on those deals are more positive, so thank you for inviting me today.
Fantastic, and looking forward to working much more again in the future.
Great, thanks Gary.